Was working last fall with my partner Christy Rich. Got a call to the North Meadows apartment complex for a domestic disturbance.
My name is Officer Christine Rich. I've worked for the Sacramento Police Department as an officer for about 3.5 years. We were dispatched to a domestic violence call, and we made contact with family members who were downstairs, and they were hysterical and indicated to us that something had happened upstairs in the apartment directly above them. Paul and I went up the stairs and knocked on the door and didn't get any response, and we both noticed that the door appeared to have been forced open.
It seemed strange that someone who lived there would have to force entry into his own home. Knocked, announced ourselves, tried to get a response, nobody answered. We decided to force entry. We basically got to the door and saw that it had been forced and got no response, so we had to make a decision to break down the door. What we found inside was a big bloody mess.
We pushed open the door and I saw the most horrific or shocking thing I've ever seen. And I looked to the left and saw a woman on the floor of a bathroom and a small child. And no movement and blood everywhere.
What happened next was pretty unexpected.
Right at that moment, Paul looked to the right and I see a guy trying to jump out the window of the second-story apartment.
We went to the window, but he wasn't stopping. He ran through the apartment complex. He just says, "No, I'm not stopping." You know, well, basically, there was a little more colorful language than I'd use here, but basically, he says, "I don't care. Kill me, shoot me." I thought about jumping out the window after him, but with all the gear on, and it seemed like a real bad decision at the time. So I said, "You know what? I'm going down the stairs." And the chase was on, and I'm running after him. Just gonna physically apprehend him when, just as I get close to him, I see that he's got a gigantic meat cleaver in his hand. And I look at that knife as I'm getting closer and I'm running, and it's kind of like one of those things you'd see in a cartoon where the cartoon character starts his legs running backwards. I've got all my momentum going towards him, and I slide out, and actually my feet slide out and I hit the ground right there.
And I see my partner fall. At that point in time, I thought, I had no idea why Paul was on the ground. I look up and this guy's got a meat cleaver in his hand. At that moment, I see Paul on the ground and he's there. We both immediately draw our guns, and this guy is yelling at us that he wants to die and he wants us to kill him, and he's already dead.
The man picked up his butcher knife that he'd used on the woman and came at me and my partner. He makes the decision to charge us with the knife, and he comes right at me with the meat cleaver from about 10 feet away.
At that time, we both fired, thinking that this guy is out of his mind and just killed 2 people.
We had no choice but to fire to protect ourselves. Even after we shot him, he still kept coming.
At that point, he still has the knife in his hand. He's on the ground. He's obviously been shot at least a couple times. The next unit on scene brings a taser, since he's now clearly, he can't get up. He's trying, but he still has a knife in his hand and is still trying to swing it.
He took multiple taser shots and baton strikes before we were able to get that giant cleaver away from him.
Another officer has to take a baton and actually pry the knife out of his hand, and then he's taken into custody.
It's kind of one of those crazy things that you'd think about or see in movies but wouldn't imagine happening. I best describe it as being like surreal, where it's one of those things you just can't even get your mind around being real until you're there. And basically once we got the knife away from him, we handcuffed him. We went back and assessed the scene, found that a woman and child had been killed. He's in custody now. Streets of Sacramento are a little safer from him. It was one of those things that I hope I'd never have to do again, but when it came down to it, I was glad to be there with people that I train with and work with regularly that I trust. Been to hundreds of domestic violence calls. Nothing could prepare us for what we were going to find at that scene. And as it turned out, it wasn't even a domestic violence call. The woman and her child were complete strangers. He'd just gone up there and killed him for what seems like the most trivial reason. Child was making too much noise.